Hello everybody, it's Fat Man from the Holler. As usual, hit that like and subscribe button and ring that bell for upcoming content. And yesterday I made a video about casting. I'm going to do a follow-up video. We're going to get a little bit deeper in there about what's going on. This is one of the 50 caliber that I cast for my 50 caliber black powder rifle, which is a Thompson. As you can see, sometimes it has little bits of impurity where it doesn't kind of mold correctly. But like I said, you have to get the mold very hot for it to work properly. As you can look, most of them are okay. And now speaking on the cracking situation, you'll see the impurity part of it. You'll see some cracking in it, some of those. I mean, it's not going to typically make it where it's not going to fire, but you can see some of them are a little bit rougher than others. But I mean, I've casted several high velocity amounts of them. And as you can see right here, I cast a lot of these, and some of them, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, they'll fire, but some of these I just don't like how they look. But I mean, they don't have to be pinpoint perfect to actually take a deer down for hunting purposes or a rabbit or small game, etc. And you can see some of that imperfection going on in there. There's different ones. And here's one of the better ones where you don't see hardly any cracking in it or too much. But they work because I've actually shot them through my 50 caliber no problem. And I'm going to show you. Here's the deal. When you cast these, what I'll do is I'll put them in a container and I'll separate them. And then when it's time for applying the A-locks, the gun lube, it's actually liquid gun A-locks. Not A-locks like mechanical stuff to actually bond stuff together, but this is A-locks coating for the lead once it is cast. And then the second thing will be needed to be done is once you have that, put it on, take like a piece of plywood or a secure place where nothing's going to be obstructed or moved. And what you do is you place a piece of wax paper down, and then you set all your bullets on it, and then they need to cure for roughly about 2 months. As you can see, this old potato salad container. So that said, I mean, it's probably quite a. I mean, as you can see, it probably weighs between 2 to 5-ish pounds. That's quite a bit of bullets instead of going to Walmart or somewhere and spending like $30 for the copper bullets, etc. So that's the 50 caliber. Okay, we're gonna get into the 44 caliber, like the Confederate Navy or the Colt Navy or the Yankee gun for the 44 black powder. As you can see, these came out really well from being cast. And then you can see this one has a little bit of the cracking because you got to get it. The mold has to be good and hot. And I'm going to show you some of these where it comes out a little less quality. And I mean they're still going to work properly because it has the grooves and everything in it. And here's one that's a little bit rougher. And then here's another rougher one. But I've actually cast, when I do casting, I produce a lot of bullets. And I'm getting ready to start doing some flat nose 45 ACP and some round nose full metal jacket 230 grain full metal or full metal jacket type ammo for the 45 ACP. And you can see some of these came out pretty good. But I used to have a 44, but before I bought a 44, I decided to make a bunch of ammo. So there's 50 caliber black powder and 44, as you can see right there. And then right here, this is from Greece, and it's not typical. It's a weird ingredients for making this non-typical gun lube instead of like buying A-locks. And what I use is golf wax, candle wax. You can use crayons for different coloring. A stick of grease like you put in a grease gun. And here's the deal: you can make this gun lubricant DIY, but you need to look at the recipe, and a lot of it is going to be like 3 parts the grease and then like 1 part petroleum. But for black powder, here's some very crucial thing: the new age oil is not something you want to use in a black powder because it's not going to really work so well. But this is just something I whipped up, and there's many recipes on the internet, and I have it written down somewhere because I have a lot of stuff to remember because I do a lot of different things. But there's a couple of different ways of going about it. But when I do my casting, I'll get back to the casting. When I do the casting, I cast all the lead and put it in the container once it cooled down, and then I'll set it in there. And then what I'll typically do is, you can get these at any like Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Walmart, pretty much. It's a bready crocker. It's got a little dust on it, but you can get these containers just about anywhere. And you take your casted bullet heads and you place them in this. And you can and then to use this DIY lubricant, you actually have to heat it up to where it comes back to the liquid, and then you can just shake it up, just kind of like making chicken nuggets of any different, like barbecue sauce or General Tso or anything. A lot of places they just put it's just regular chicken nugget, and then you put it and shake it in there. Same way you put the bullets in that's been cast. You can use the homemade DIY gun lube and shake it up, and then once it's done, you pull the bullets out and you set them on wax paper in a good place where they're not going to be disturbed. The other way of doing it is if you don't want to mess with DIY gun lube and you don't really trust it, which I do because I've actually shot many rounds through black powder 50 caliber, no problem. But if you want to do it a different way, you just buy regular gun A-locks bullet lube, and then all you gotta do is put your cast bullets inside, and then all it takes is, like, just about 3 to 4 drops. It don't take much because it goes a long way, and then you shake the bullets up, and then once the bullets are well lubricated and everything's lubricated, then you do the same thing. You place it on wax paper. It's really simple thing to do, and I like to touch base with explaining it because when I do things that I do, a lot of it is taught to me from family, because during the Civil War, I had a lot of family who did fight for pretty much predominantly the South. And in them days, the South had lots of problems because the separation from the country was divided. And I don't like to talk about it because it's a very touchy subject, but this is a historical thing, and this is based upon about firearms, no political beliefs or any of that type nature stuff, so we can skip that. But what people was doing in those days is there's 3 ingredients for making gunpowder. And this is a disclaimer. I'm not responsible for injuries or anybody making bombs or explosives or doing any kind of crazy stuff with what I'm going to say. I'm just going to give the basics, and it's PNSC. And what PN is PN represents the periodic table, is potassium nitrate. Then you have S, which is sulfur. And sulfur can also be called saltpeter. Like people give it to like a bull to control bulls during breeding season, so they're not staying in heat so bad where their aggression levels up, and etc. And then you have carbon, which is from burning. And the thing about producing your carbon is you can get good carbon, and you have to take a hammer and refine it, the coals. And where you're going to get the best coals is from maple, elm, or even pallet wood that's typically made by elm or maple, like a lighter, dense wood, It goes that way. And then as far as the sulfur, this is something they did in the Civil War. I'm going to get right back to what I was talking about. They would pee, and sometimes they use human feces and pee to create the sulfur. And what a lot of folks did that's not very known is they used a lot of women's pee to create the sulfur because it had higher estrogen levels of pregnant ladies, etc., to produce that. And then like your potassium nitrate is PN is potassium nitrate, and how it works is potassium. It's like found in bananas, and I've actually done the research to actually extract enough potassium for doing very much. It's very difficult to do from a banana or even a banana peel. And then the N will be your nitrate, which is a salt, which is how it works in a firearm or projectile or typical firecracker. It's more of reflective. And there's other ways that some of this stuff goes. As you see people buying Tannerite, here's another one, and I'm not responsible for injuries or anybody trying to make this. If you don't have experience, you can just listen to this, but I definitely don't want nobody doing it that's not skilled, has a skill level like I do, because I actually have a minor degree in explosives. So I can make Tannerite. You get a coal pack, and you take a razor blade and you cut it, you remove the water, you take the pellets, and then you take aluminum foil and you grind it up to make aluminum powder, and then that's basically hillbilly Tannerite, basically the same thing as Tannerite, bought for X amount of dollars, because I know how to do multiple things. And I always like to tell people, it's a disclaimer, I'm not responsible for injuries or anything of that nature, because I don't want nobody getting hurt or trying it. I mean, I can give you the basics, and I actually have the stuff for making homemade gunpowder, which is, as I said, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and carbon. And a lot of people who make their own, like, homemade firecrackers, and depending on what level you get into that, that's when you have to be very aware of state, local, and federal laws. Some of the best carbon you can get, as I said, you can refine it, but you can also go different places like Amazon and other places. You can actually buy it. It's actually called float charcoal. It's used for rockets and firecrackers, gunpowder, and little stuff like cannons, etc. And all the components can be bought online. And the thing is, like, if you're making homemade firecrackers, you can buy rocket fuse, and that's not very expensive. And then you can buy the caps like the old M80s come in, but you have to be very careful when you're doing all this. And that's why I say there's a disclaimer, because reflective elements and stuff gets together. If it's mixed wrong or shaken up or any kind of static electricity, it can actually make it combust and be an explosion. So I definitely don't want to be responsible for anybody's injury or death or destruction of anything that happens. That's why I'm saying you have to definitely be taught how to do this in a certain category, and you can do it in lighter things. Not saying, like, if you're making a little firecracker is pretty simple, and all this is pretty simple, but the dynamics of it gets complex, because I really, when I make a video, it's all about my users and the people who watch me and subscribe, and new viewers and old, etc. I do not want nobody getting injured or doing anything that's going to result in them to be incarcerated, arrested, injured, or personal loss of any category, that type nature. And I like to say that, and I'll say it multiple times, because I really want that to be understood. And when you're doing these type things, you really need to wear personal PPE gear. And I'm going to show you something else that can actually be bought. It's not a crazy price. This is a face shield. And this is something else when you're casting lead. As I've talked about before, wearing goggles, so in case that lead splatters or anything, it doesn't hit you in your face. And this mask can be bought pretty cheaply off Amazon. Having a mask is a great thing. Protects your face. And when you're touching these elements, I would recommend a latex glove of a mid-level, or even a chemical grade glove, so you don't have any kind of problems. You need to do it in an area where there's no children or any kind of animals or any kind of things that will cause any kind of static electricity. So I really like to be clear about the stuff when I talk about this, and I'm very skeptical about putting this on YouTube. I see a lot of other people doing it. This is for being a hobbyist, and it's for scientific understanding and educational purposes. This is not for anything illegal or any kind of violence or any kind of injuries to anybody. So this is just a pretty short video and some basic things that I do. And there's other things that I know how to make, which, I mean, the world is not too hip to. Like, I know how to make moonshine. And I may make a video on moonshine if I build a still or buy a still. Because as you can see, I have the old moonshine jug that's pretty old. Has the state of Illinois on there, as you see. And you don't want to make moonshine and stick it in them. But I can make a moonshine that can actually productively run a small engine, like a push more to a ride more, that kind of thing. Because moonshine is pretty much just typically E85. And all the stuff that I do is for my educational purposes, and things that I've been taught, and the people who's taught me how to do some of these things is family history of being in wars, because a lot of family is soldiers. Then I have friends who actually have doctorate degrees in electricity and physics and different areas of physics, and I have multiple friends in that community. And I have a lot of friends and family who actually work in places manufacture firearms here locally here in Missouri and different parts of the state. So when I do things, I want it to be precision. It's all about precision and following guidelines, because I'm not going to set somebody up for failure, or of death or injury or personal loss or being incarcerated. So it's always good to know your federal, state, and local laws and have your PPE gear and have a designated area for creating these things. And then if you're making homemade firecrackers or rockets, you need to be able to know a designated place you can shoot those off. And some of the other things that's pretty funny about the rockets, because I've done a lot of that stuff for scientific values, is you can make sugar rockets and stuff like that, and it's more of a scientific thing. You can put like a little Bluetooth or a little camera on it, and you can see how far it goes up and measure it. So I do things as a hobbyist, and I try not to become too over analytical in it, but I do like to touch base on all categories of it, so it's very understanding and appealing to the viewers. So I'm going to wrap this up, and as always, thank everybody for all the views of the old and new subscribers or viewers in general. And everybody have a blessed day and stay safe. And definitely be very cautious if you do any of these things, and read on it and get some guidance before you do it. And that is all.